Is Libya prepared to comply with the UN resolution and the president's demands? Listen to this. This just in from Libya's deputy foreign minister in Tripoli.
The armed forces are now located outside the city of Benghazi, and we have no intention of entering the city.
All right, let's turn to someone who actually knows something about a no-fly zone operation. Joining us now, the former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, retired U.S. Army General Wesley Clark. General, thanks very much for coming in. Susan Rice, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, told me in the last hour, Gaddafi and Libya, the regime, they are in violation now of this UN Security Council resolution, Resolution 1973, passed 24 hours ago. How much time do you give them before military action should begin?
Well, in my view, military action should have begun immediately, and it hasn't. So I assume that they're scrambling to get something put together. You've got to arrange the command and control. You've got to get a diplomatic team in there to talk to Gaddafi and follow up on it, because, Wolf, the idea is not to bomb him into submission. It's to use the leverage, the military leverage of the UN Security Council resolution and our forces to use diplomacy and well, this is a little bit ambiguous. Either restore the humanitarian situation, as the president said, or get him out of there. As the Secretary of State said, he has no business being there. Because
the U.S. and its coalition partners, the NATO allies, some of the Arab League countries who will participate, they've had 4 weeks to think about this. They knew it was coming, didn't they?
Well, it seems that they would have known it was coming, and you would have hoped there would have been strong preparation. But there were also strong reservations. Germany, for example, had abstained in the UN Security Council vote. So it doesn't seem like this is going to be a NATO-based operation. It could have been done through NATO with the so-called Mediterranean dialogue that we've had in existence since the 1990s in NATO. We could have built it around a NATO framework. It could be a coalition of the willing, but somehow you have to have some airborne early warning and command and control aircraft up there to provide the radar coverage you need. You put your interceptor aircraft or ground attack aircraft airborne over that, and maybe you use also some unmanned aerial vehicles. But the sooner you do this, the sooner the message gets through to Gaddafi. And what you have to worry about is not just the forces that are poised outside Benghazi, but Gaddafi's intelligence arm and his people going into Benghazi, identifying opposition leaders, threatening them and their families, or maybe bribing them and trying to drive apart the opposition. Certainly, he's in a fight for his life. Maybe he is just stunned and in denial right now, but my guess is that there are people around Gaddafi who are saying, okay, how do we use this? Okay, we call for a ceasefire, we get as much as we grab as much as we can, we consolidate what we can, we destroy evidence of previous war crimes violations, which I'm sure were there, and we try to cover our tracks, and we prepare for the long haul, and we try to hold on to power in Libya. That's their game.
Every military expert, every general I've spoken to over the past few weeks says a no-fly zone begins with an air assault. You take out the anti-aircraft missile systems, the radar systems, you bomb targets on the ground, you crater their runways, if you will, at least delay them being able to take off planes, whether they're old MiGs or their Mirages, whatever they have. When do you think those strikes? I assume that if you're going to do it, you have to begin with an air assault like that.
Well, Wolf, I think that's really questionable. I know that a lot of people have said it. I know the Secretary of Defense said it. And certainly that's one way to do it. But if you go back to the record, we flew over Iraq continuously without taking out all of his anti-aircraft weapons. We flew over Bosnia in a no-fly zone over Bosnia without taking out all of their anti-aircraft weapons. We waited until we were illuminated in a certain way that the enemy had shown so-called hostile intent before we engaged. So, and we did lose one aircraft over Bosnia in I think it was early 1995. But there's different ways to do it. So it might not necessarily begin with a sweeping attack on his integrated air defense system. It could, but it doesn't necessarily have to.
How risky is this for U.S. military personnel?
Well, I think that although Libya does have an air force, it's got MiG-21s and probably some MiG-25s that can still fly. High-performance aircraft with modern high-performance aircraft with the right kind of training and the right kind of radar support can certainly handle that threat with, I'm not saying it's not dangerous, but it's certainly manageable. But when you get it mixed up on the ground, what you want to be careful of is that you don't create incidents that cause civilian casualties that backfire against NATO's good intentions, because it's very possible for Gaddafi to ground all his aircraft and still infiltrate tanks and snipers and infantry squads and intelligence agents and continue to pick apart the opposition. He's got them hemmed in at this point, it appears, and so he does have the military momentum, and that hasn't exactly changed yet.
One final question, General. There's a lot of concern about what's called mission creep, that the no-fly zone also becomes the no-drive zone. You start taking out artillery and tanks, positions like that. Is that a good idea?
Well, I think this is, you know, the fundamental question of the intervention, Wolf. The question is, what's the real objective, and can you stop short? Will you be satisfied if you're the President of the United States or if you're the leader of France? Will you be satisfied if Gaddafi said, oh, okay, I stop. I've halted my forces. You know, I'm willing to consider where we are right now. Now, these people are criminals. They must be punished in accordance with the law of Libya, but I'm not going to do any more with heavy artillery. Are you happy with that? Or would you say, as the Secretary of State said, that he's forfeited, or the President said, he's forfeited his legitimacy to rule in Libya? If you mean that, then it means following through to regime change. And if that's the objective, and the airstrike or the air cover doesn't work, then presumably, and diplomacy doesn't work, presumably you're going to do something else. And this is the imponderable in this situation. This is always the concern in an intervention, is what's your objective? If the objective is humanitarian, that's fine. When we went into Kosovo, we had no intention at that time of forcing Milosevic out of office. It was simply to stop the ethnic cleansing. But this may be different.
Well, the president says Gaddafi must go, so presumably it is regime change. That's the ultimate goal right now. They want him either dead, I'm sure, or be at a criminal court of justice in The Hague.
Then that's the mission. There's no creep.
Well, that I assume is the mission, whether they say it or not. All right, thanks very much for that, General. Appreciate it, General Wesley Clark.